Welcome to Talking Stations. It's Matt, all here with Ashterothi. How you doing, Ash?
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashterothi. I'm doing good, man. It is Tuesday, and of course, as we know, Tuesday is a big news day for video games, Patchday. And in our case, we have a patch too.
All right. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We have a friend here, Torvald, with us. He's going to help us with Patchday.
Heck yeah. What's up, everybody?
How you doing, Torvald? Thanks for coming on. We have another guest. Ash, who'd you invite?
I brought a buddy of mine named Lorinda, who is probably not really well known among a lot of the circles of Eve, but is pretty well known outside of circles of Eve and has functioned as an ambassador for us a few times now. And recently, just today, I think got published on IGN. So about our current ongoing wars. So I wanted to talk to him about what it's been like to be an Eve correspondent for IGN.
Yeah, that's been an interesting experience to say the least. So that's. Do you want to go to that now, or we go to that later? It's up to you.
We'll get to that later.
We can dive into that in the whole segment, but why don't you? Did I miss anything with your introduction?
No, not at all. Today IGN published an Eve article. It follows for Eve players. It follows a fairly standard formula. This much money's taken place, been blown up, war is happening, blah blah blah. And the challenge was balancing that. But yeah, if you want to check out IGN, have a look at that article after the show. Then it's definitely worth it.
But in the event that somebody hasn't been spending time in like my Discord and met you before, who are you?
So yeah, I'm a Hearthstone caster and do all the stats for Blizzard's Hearthstone Grandmasters leagues. I've always wanted to play Eve, and about 18 months ago, I finally officially lost Eve. Well, I think I lost it about 20 years ago, really, as soon as I heard the game was going to exist. And yeah, I'll be stuck in Eve now for the rest of my life. So I always knew that would happen. Hence, I took a long time to even enter the fray in the first place.
That's about when I started.
Everybody knows the voice of Gregorian. He's also with us today. So you're not new to the game, but you're fascinated.
No, I absorbed a lot of content as well. Like I was in Ash's stream and asking him lore questions day after day after he streamed, before he streamed, during his streams for months on end. So I'm new-ish, like 18 months-ish, but I have taken a lot of Eve information in that time.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome. It's going to be interesting to talk with you and get to know you, actually. Let's start at the top. By the way, I didn't say this about Torvald, but he's not here just to talk about patch notes, although he'd be great for that. He actually released a faction warfare presentation that was something he did for the CSM, and he released it publicly, so you can catch that. We'll give you that address as well. A quick preview on that, Torvald. What is that?
So basically, I got a chance. We've been poking people at CCP for a while, a couple of us, and I finally got a chance to sit down, have like the big meeting, a big like climactic event, and finally got a lot of information to the right people that needed to hear it. And hopefully one day this will spark what we need to fix faction warfare and make it one of the best places in Eve again.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, Ashterothi, take us back to the top and let's go through the stuff one by one, starting with the patch notes. It's patch day.
Well, did we want to discuss? We had a couple of news things. You want to talk about the freighter?
I don't know what you're referring to, but yeah, sure.
Members of Horde Vanguard killed freighter, which picked up unanchored Goonswarm Keepstar.
Oh.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Night, a little bit after last night's show, I actually asked one of the people who organized that operation for a comment. He said I haven't gotten a comment back from him, but he said he'd have some comments to say. So we'll have that for tomorrow. But yeah, that was another Goonswarm Keepstar was unsuccessfully extracted after the previous one was stolen, but this one was picked up by a Goonswarm freighter, but then dreads were dropped on the freighter and it was killed. And it did not drop in the wreck.
Right. So that's okay. The reason I was confused is because we did cover that yesterday, not on this show, but that happened right after the show yesterday. So it made it into yesterday's newspaper inside of game. So for all of you, I'm going to remind you one more time, if you want a newspaper from Talking in Stations in game, you need to go to your mail, go to bottom left, you'll see a button saying add mailing list and subscribe to TIS News, and that'll get you our in-game newspaper. So we did put it in that summary yesterday. So what happened is that a freighter was trying to make off with an unanchored keep star because Imperium or Goon Swarm is bringing down some keep stars. And that one was destroyed before it got away. I think it had a Cerberus fleet that was protecting it, but that wasn't enough. And so that's the second keep star that Imperium has lost in Delve, not through warfare, but through bringing it down, unanchoring it, and trying to get away with it. The first one was stolen. That was stolen. Here, I'll bring this up here. And these two were neighbors. That's why I bring it up. But the first one was stolen in, let's go to Delve.
KTAC6K16.
Thank you. KTAC6, which is right.
But I heard it wasn't really Delve.
No, this is...
Yeah. And this one wasn't killed in Delve. It was killed in Providence.
All right.
In a Providence.
Stop the memeing, guys. The KTAC6 was the scene of a robbery where a keep star unexpectedly unanchored, and it was swooped up by NC Dot. They took it away, and now they own that keep star. Yesterday happened right next door over here in YTAC K. So this area here is considered behind enemy lines for Imperium because this area here is NPC Delve, and that area is pretty much controlled by, as much as you can control NPC space, by Pappy, because this is one of their staging grounds right here in YZ9. So if you look at it, this constellation back here is considered behind that area because you have to travel through 319 in order to get to this area. So it's tricky for them. It's not easy for them. And so as you've seen, a keep star was stolen here in KTAC 6, and then yesterday it wasn't stolen, but as it was trying to get away, it was blown up and destroyed in WTAC K. So that's yesterday's story. It happened after this show, and thanks for reminding me. Okay, what's the other piece of news before we start?
The other piece of news was that as part of this patch, before we get into the nitty gritty that matters to those of us who play that have been playing for a while, we now have Japanese localization. So this is actually really interesting. Localization has been something that CCP has lagged behind on historically. It's been a struggle, but now that we have the Pearl Abyss acquisition and stuff, we see this big push for adoption in the we had the Chinese localization, right? And then and now we have a Japanese localization. So now people who speak Japanese can play EVE in their native tongue, and there is a set of skins that are available on the market and on through the new starter packs, which we'll talk about more at the end. And that's how those get distributed into the game. But obviously, you can still buy them on the market. They have a cool particle effect in there based on cherry blossoms. So they have some cool texture to them too. But the good news is that hopefully we'll see an influx of Japanese players into the game and increased Japanese organization.
Yeah. So we're seeing fireworks that were what? Where are these fireworks from?
So this morning, CCP went and did a big huzzah. And you can see the Polaris frigate in the video, and they just were celebrating it with various different fireworks. These look like all fireworks that were released before, but you do see some of the newer skins on some of the ships on stuff. But they were just having a good old time and welcoming all of our new Japanese players.
Yeah, they had fireworks in every empire. So if you were in Galente space, there was a system where they were doing this. Same with any of the other empires. It's a big celebration for welcoming Japanese back, because they did have Japanese localization before, but they then took it out of the game, and now it's made its comeback. I think it's been a couple of years, maybe, or a year. It hasn't been that long.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. But yeah, I hope that, again, having an international owner kind of helps push you towards supporting those markets.
Well, they also have a team. If you look at EVE Echoes, right, which is the companion game to EVE Online, it's just a mobile version, different universe, But they have all kinds of localization. They even have Spanish localization. So
That's true.
that is a function of, I think, being able to reuse resources, because you're talking about the same nomenclature, the same. If they can name modules for Echoes, they can name those same modules in EVE Online. So I think there's a lot of work that's been done for EVE Echoes.
Yeah.
Translated.
Yeah, and there is like the mechanics for localization to exist in EVE, so that way they can have multiple localizations and switch between them easily. But mobile development really enhanced that. So I would assume that the mobile developers would be able to leverage those additional functionality to basically use the native phone's ability to swap between languages.
And if that's not enough, though, you can actually help with localization efforts if you know a second language. Sorry,
I was just about to say that. Thank you. I was pulling it up. ISD needs you. This was published about a week or two ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. They just said just after they announced that this Japanese localization was going to come out, they said ISD, which are volunteers that were like players that volunteer to be part of this. There are multiple ISD departments, but one of those ISD departments is volunteer translators. So, for years people have said, oh, well, why don't they just source it from the player base? Well, guess what? They might be. So if this is something that you want to take part in, ISD is actively recruiting to expand localization.
Oh yeah, they definitely want you to help out. It's right here. It's the LOC team. It's a localization team. So if you know a different language, sign up with CCP through this volunteer form. We'll put that. It's called volunteers. Sorry, the URL is volunteers.eveonline.com. That's easy enough to understand. And you can sign up for the localization team and help them out if you know other languages. All right.
Yep.
Thanks for that. We were watching that video again from CCP. And that was fireworks that they used to celebrate today. So there you go. All right. So those are the few things before we get to the patch notes, which I think are really interesting this time around.
Yeah, I would say that this was the sneaky patch. This was the patch of little things that we didn't expect.
Yep.
I'll just go over some highlights and then I'll let people kind of chime in with whatever we want to start biting on first. The highlights that I have for the patch notes is we have now faction and Tech 2 salvage drones. There are new additional ore anomalies in both lowsec and nullsec. There's now dynamic bounty system has been added to lowsec, so not the ESS system, but the actual dynamic bounty systems where rats are worth different amounts depending on how much people have rat there versus fought there. That has now been extended into lowsec, and the drone aggro changes that were heralded a few weeks ago have now gone in, as well as two kind of unexpected quality of life changes that I'm really appreciative of. One is now when you recall probes, those probes will now stack in your cargo automatically, which is super cool. For those of us who are both explorers and anal retentive about our paying attention to what's in our cargo hold and how much it's worth. And because the other one is
let's fully explain that for people who didn't quite get why that's important to you.
Sure. Oh yeah. So basically, you have 8 probes, right? So you launch out 8 probes, you recall those 8 probes back in. They're now 8 items in your inventory. So if you just have a little box open, so that way you can keep track of what is entered into your cargo hold. Now your entire cargo hold is just your entire selection is probes, or you have to get around
scroll down.
And you have to right click, stack all, or whatever. Every single time you launch probes, it's just a giant pain in the butt.
I don't even can you stack all if they're unpacked?
Yeah, you can. Wait.
Probe scan. I don't think probes are
the probes don't
unstack, right?
Yeah, or the clones don't pack and unpack. They're kind of like ammo, whenever you switch charges. And I think if I remember correctly, ammo does that. Ammo automatically stacks or doesn't. I know crystals don't, but I think ammo normally does that.
Right. Yeah.
But probes are the big you ever had. I mean, all you have to do is right click stack, but still, it's just such a quality of life update,
And then the other one, which I think is even bigger, is now you can move from one fleet to another without having to drop out of a fleet. So if you try to go into another fleet while you're in a fleet, you'll just transfer to the other fleet. This may seem small, but when you're managing large fleets, especially large fleets with less experienced people. It might be some people's first time ever being in a fleet. Suddenly, like what'll often happen is we'll form a fleet and then move that fleet to another place. Well, we were then like link up with another fleet and like fall under a different FC once we get there. And that is never as straightforward as you would like it to be. So now it's just like people can just go straight over without ever not being in a fleet. There's no dropping out of fleet to get into another fleet. There's no point in which we lose chain of custody. It's a small thing, but it's the things that matter.
Oh yeah, this is great. Like, especially for coordinating coalition-wide operations where you might have to merge a few fleets because of fleet numbers, for example. Like, I often help answer new player questions in pandemic horde fleets as a thing that I do a lot, and frequently one of the things I have to explain when a fleet is merging is how to join the new fleet.
Somebody's going to have an accident with that, though, right? Like, we've got a war going on, and somebody is going to misclick into the wrong fleet at the wrong time and have a bad accident.
It does bring an interesting question. So, like, I assume that there's like confirmation dialogues to prevent you from just whoopsie daisying through it. But does that mean that you can send somebody a fleet invite, or like, I could see a subterfuge where you literally like try to make people leave the fleet, like send in a bad fleet. You know how sometimes like you send a thing that's like a channel and it's like, haha, pwned, you know, whatever. But like if you can convince even a handful of people to accidentally drop out of fleet, although I guess you could just do that now. But I mean, like if you click on this and then click on OK, now you're in my fleet instead of their fleet, and I warp you, and you go and then you die. I imagine that's going to happen at least once.
Oh yeah,
I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have already thought of that.
Okay, so now those are the big ones. I think there's one more that's a pet peeve of it's not a pet peeve. It's just something that came to mind, and that is that you can no longer, there's a couple things with cloning in here that we should probably talk about. One of them is, the takeaway is you can't relocate your clone back to Jita anymore since it doesn't have a clone bay. So only stations that have clone bays can be called home.
Yeah, so this is a crazy one. I actually had a separate list, which is like issues, but you're right. This is technically intended. So, as it turns out, the fact that you can set your home station to a station that doesn't have a clone bay was a bug. Who knew? So, as part of this patch, that bug has been corrected, and so now, in order to set home station to a station, you have to have an eligible clone bay, or a structure. It has to have an eligible clone bay for you to be able to set home to it. Yeah. Now, that does kind of make sense. It is sort of inconvenient for a lot of people. I think it's going to change a lot of things. Some people were talking about mission hubs that may not have clone bays in the mission hub. But like Jita, yeah, you're right. How many people have their home set to Jita? You can't do that anymore as of today with no warning.
Torvald, is that something that a solo PvPer would do? Every time they die, go back to Jita, buy a new thing, and go? Or is that overstated?
Yeah, so especially with the Yeet filaments and the Abyssal PvP filaments, those are two areas where having your home station in Jita is very convenient and easy, especially 4-4, because if you die, you go back. Anyone else? I mean, if you plan on dying, reclone, and unless you have a stockpile somewhere, you have yourself set up somewhere, Jita is the place where you go back when you die, you get all your stuff, you buy everything because it's easy, it's convenient. You know, it's really inconvenient to have to, you know, as long it only takes a couple of seconds, but it's inconvenient to have to undock, warp to another station dock, or jump systems or whatnot. So it makes life easier, and it makes sense that it was a bug. It makes sense because obviously, why would you be able to come back in a station that doesn't have a cloning station? But for how many years that's been the norm, and people have been using that. And I mean, we're not only Jita, but you know, everywhere across, you know, wherever people would set a home station. So while it's considered a bug that's fixed, I would argue that that's a problem that we need. I mean, I think, you know, the whole clone system and everything's kind of janky, and there's a lot of annoyances with it, but hopefully, especially with the shit they've been doing with Jita 4.4 lately, hopefully that's something they're thinking about. Oh, well, we need to put a clone bay there because we literally just spent X amount of time making that the grand central hub of New Eden. So
Yeah,
and
at least
people
put a
will
clone
move,
bay in there.
right? Eventually people will move because this is Eve, so they will go to 4 or 5 or something equally silly.
I want to tackle this from a lore perspective, which is that, like, if they've just spent the last year doing all those renovations and all that stuff, and they had major input and funding from Upwell, which is the leading producers of capsuleer focused technology and equipment. You don't have a clone bay in Jita 4-4 station? Are you kidding me? Like, all this does is show that it should have had a clone bay in the first place. It's a fully serviced station. What are you doing?
Well, that's probably how they fix this, right? They just put a clone bay in it. Done. That solves the problem.
Yeah.
But it still exists in other places where people had headquarters without clone bays. Now that's a big problem. By the way,
this is all.
Last thing on this. If you have a clone going back to Jita, it's grandfathered in, so nothing changes for you until you make your home somewhere else. But for new people and anybody who wants to do it in the future, not possible at this point.
Yeah, this is also a big issue for wormholers because since you can't have your medical clone go to your home hole, getting it to Jita is a great central location, although a lot of people have their medical clones in Omar because that's a hub that's more centrally located in terms of high-sec geography. So you can just go grab an interceptor from Jita and go to the nearest high-sec connection in your chain, and that's an easy route home, relatively easy.
I would really have loved to see how many people, like, throughout all of Eve, have home stations set to places without. Because, I mean, aside from Jita, which is the big obvious one, I'm just curious, like, how many active accounts across the entirety of Eve have home stations set to a place for a certain reason, you know?
Well, so most places, it won't matter so much because, like, you could always just drop in. There's probably a player structure, but Jita can't have player structures, which is why that particular pain point happens. Which actually reminds me that I think that one of the reasons why this change happened in the first place is because of all of the changes that have been being done in relation with Poshvin, dealing with structures and stations and docking access tied with standings. It could be possible that this was a result of that iteration, because now they have added in that control of, like, no, because, like, basically, if you want to put it a different way, up until now, you could just set any station as your home station, but they needed to make it so that if you couldn't, like, right now, that would mean that you'd be able to set your own clone bay to a Poshvin system station, even if you didn't have a med clone there, theoretically. Although, actually, now that I think about it, you can't do that because that isn't how any of that works. So scratch all of that.
Okay. Erase your memory.
Either way, my point is that while they're dinkering with that same stuff, it makes sense that this bug fix would come out of that time. But I absolutely agree with Dirk that this was not a bug that needed fixing.
Well, hold on. They've done this before, and I think what they're doing is cleaning code for future development. I don't know. That's the assumption I make. They've done this before that really affected wormholers. Remember when they took away the mass increase of I think it was Afterburner or
Hicks.
something, or Hicks. Yeah, there was something to do with Hicks, and that really affected them. But they said, yeah, it was a fix, and we wanted to fix this thing, and we finally did, and so it was a good thing. And holy hell, it really hurt some people. So that's the same thing. As CCP is fixing things, there are errors in the code that we took advantage of and made it our lifestyle. And in order for them to make the game go forward, they need to clean some stuff up. It's going to affect us in ways that may not be intended. I think this is one of them, but they can easily fix this, I think. One more thing in Jita.
They need more clone base.
One more thing in Jita. It was on the test server that you couldn't put down any deployables. And that is true. This patch brings that in. You cannot put down any new deployables, but all the old deployables that were already up all around Jita are still there. Those will expire though, right?
I think that's a little sad. Like, I know a lot of people hate all the spam in Jita and the lag it causes, but it gives Jita a lot of character to... It's like not just another system. It's got this, like, horrible, dark mess about it. So I kind of think it's sad that they've had to stop it, but I understand why.
I always considered it a very in-your-face example of the sandbox, right? Like you literally just draw in the sand a giant word, and everybody has to see it when they fly by. But whatever.
Yeah, so long Moonpire, but the Triglavian symbol, that one was pretty sweet. I thought that one was cool. I
They'll
like
just move
it.
to the perimeter gates. It'll be fine.
It's like a Nike swoop in the air is what it looked like. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Ash. Totally commandeered your patch notes segment. So go ahead.
Oh no! Well, no. I said I read through it, and I said I was going to open it up for people to chat on whichever pieces that they want. But since we also have been talking about some of the issues that have come out of this, this is one of those patches where the list of known issues is longer than the list of features that I have set out. But so first of all, the text on the Eris and the Flycatcher, and I guess maybe Arazu.
Hold on. Sorry, I'm going to stop you. Can we start at the top with audio and graphics? Because I think there's a really big announcement there. Please.
Sure. Well, let me finish this real quick, and then we'll jump back to that, I guess.
Right.
All I'm saying is that change about the Eris, Flycatcher, and Razu change was only textual. So the description for those ships is currently wrong. Those reverted to the pre-patch, the previous patch that changed those ships. The text now shows the old text, even though the ship itself is the new ship configuration. Now go on with other cool stuff from this patch.
All right. Now, audio and graphics, because this is a big deal, I think.
Oh yeah.
I
So
was waiting for you to catch that.
we were just hitting this right before the stream. That's why I didn't have it added into our notes. So Aura is now fully voice acted in the tutorial. For those of you who are more than say 6 months old, the tutorial has been undergoing gradual but pretty extreme changes over the last 6 months to a year. So now a new player is actually not presented any of the UI. It's just their ship in space and Aura talking to them as Aura brings their systems online and slowly but surely teaches them the UI, leading up to the overview, etc., and getting them to actually play. But what that has meant is that there's just these like giant wall of text effectively that you have to read from Aura as she introduces you to all this stuff. Well, now that's all voice acted. And Aura is like robotic, so I assume that it's not like so constrained as like literal voice acted, but it might be partially or totally synthesized. But there's like, it's got good voice inflection. You really to me, it changed the experience. I really felt like I was legitimately playing the start of a video game. It was interesting.
The cowbell here in comments says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sexy is her voice?
Oh boy. No, she sounds exactly the same. Like the warp drive active, that same
like a teacher.
She sounds like Aura.
Do you remember I think it was Vegas 2019, they had the presentation where it was Aura, like she was like a fluid moving like person. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I think that CCP continues to work towards more, and I hesitate to say this every time, but more avatar-based stuff, i.e. like seeing the person that's talking to you for missions. And one of the things that they showed was like a fully realized and animated Aura with lights all down her back, and she could get it. Eve has sound, yes, and even though the meme is funny, there's actually a lot of indicators in Eve that those who are not listening to the sound are missing out on.
Eve has always had great sound, and it's part of the immersion, and I really hate that comment, so it's gone, and that guy's been triggering, so he's going to be gone for a little
That's
while.
fine. I just wanted to speak directly to it because it was my opportunity to be like, hey, straw man.
Yeah,
all
audience,
right.
Hey,
anywho,
you're here to feel out the room, man. This is a discussion, cooperative, and we're all here to have a good time. If you're here to like get somebody mad at you, you're in the wrong place. Go watch something else. Anyway, go ahead.
Cool. Let's go talk about all the things that make us mad about this patch.
That's right.
All right. So known issues. First off, apparently you now like T3 cruiser pilots. Today is the day to go woohoo because there's no skill loss for T3 cruiser destruction. That is listed as a known issue, so that could be fixed at any time. Don't be too confident on that. There's a Yule skin for the Minakawa that is displaying the wrong lights. Who cares? The weather effects that are at the bottom, little charms that are on your ship that let you know what status effects, like system-wide status effects that are on your ship, doesn't display when you're looking at another ship or another thing. Mobile tractor units. So when they released the Corpse mobile tractor unit for the Crimson Harvest, it didn't have a good icon. Like they didn't match up the icon correctly. So it's just like the exclamation point of like, I don't have an icon. Well, they fixed that this time by making it so that none of the MTUs have an icon. So they all just have a little exclamation point now, but that'll be fixed soon. If you're scanning a cosmic signature and it just disappears, that's a bug right now. Hopefully it'll get fixed soon. I have no idea how you're supposed to do exploration at the moment. Somebody said that was related to the new anomalies spawning in nullsec and lowsec. R&D agents are acting up. Sometimes they're not succeeding correctly and they're not behaving correctly. You are unable to self-destruct your pod in certain stations.
Oh, that's right. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's
part
of
but
that
these are all
yeah.
Right. But unlike this home station and Jita one, these are things that CCP has stated are known issues. So all of the things I just listed are all things that I would expect to get fixed over the next couple of days to weeks through patches. But this brings me to why Ash is really grumpy about this patch, which is okay. If you're going to change drones to make it so that the drone aggro doesn't work as well as it did before, at least make it so that it fixes the bugs that used to also affect us with drone aggro. But instead of that, we just get the same problems, but now worse. So two of the ones that I've heard of is if you assist your drones onto another pilot, and then that pilot attacks an NPC, the assisted drones won't assist. So assist doesn't work against NPCs. It does work against player characters. I really hope that's a bug, and if not, I need to talk to a few people to explain why it should be.
Let me check. We had chatter about that. Let me check real quick.
Yeah, let me hear about that. And then, but the other one, while you look that up, is so it used to be that like as you're fighting, your drones will sometimes just swap to a different target. So you'd want to always, hit F every once in a while just to make sure that they're all focused on one target. Well, now apparently they failed to switch to a different target and just like stop. I assume that they go idle, so you'd have to watch to see if your drones are going idle. That has been the behavior for a very long time. So hopefully both of those would be addressed pretty soon.
Well, we wait. Lorinda, how do you find Aura's voice?
You have to make a new character.
Okay.
Yep.
But I want his opinion on Aura's voice.
I did the NPE about 18 months ago, and I don't know, I don't remember it that well, but probably like an 8 or something. Yeah, it was a good
You
point.
rated on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Good for you.
I'm not telling you what the scale was, so then you can make your own opinion.
Oh,
so
okay,
that's the trick.
8%.
One of the things I do like is that they definitely kept some of the snarkiness of Aura in the lore. There's actually a really good chronicle about Aura and
is that lore?
Is
that canon that she's snarky? Is that correct to her character?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like she used to be a burlesque dancer. I think it was. She was a performer before, like the person who was then transformed into Aura in the story. So like she's always been like this rebellious spirit kind of character. But yeah, she definitely has some of that snark. She doesn't literally laugh at you for dying anymore, but she's snarky enough.
Yeah,
something that has been obvious to me, like playing the game for so little time, is I've seen when I came into the game, the NPE was the big talking point on this particular show. This was the first show I watched to do with Eve, and
awesome.
It's changed so much in the last 18 months, even since I joined. I kept an eye on it because I was going through it as they were talking about changing it. And just like the lower level missions and stuff now have like the equivalent of tooltips in them. You do a mission, it'll be like, be aware that you can do this really obvious thing because we've played for 18 months and I understand what those things are. So already, even in that time, I've seen all the changes adding together. Each time one of these things changes in the patch notes, it's actually all coming together now.
Well, when I first started the game, one of the things that got me through it was having this companion, this AI basically, that was helping me along. And that kept me interested enough to do the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing. And then after a while, you either hook in or you don't. But I think Aura really is the one that retained me. She's good for retention. So the fact that they have her voiced, I think, is a nice companion. And that she's a funny burlesque female makes it even better. It completes like the me, myself against the universe, and I got my gal with me in the computer.
Right. It helps establish an emotional connection. Yeah, exactly. And it's true. Like you gotta give somebody something to latch onto. But the thing is, like, I just experienced this right beforehand, and I gotta tell you, like, the night and day difference, because so the screen comes on, it's just your ship, you're in the middle of nowhere. Text box shows up, screen rolls across. Like, that's the old introduction. Now it's like the screen comes up and then it's talking to you. Like it pulls you in. The difference is actually dramatic between like, oh look, here's the text box. Okay, now it's time to read, versus you now are hearing her talk. And as Rado pointed out, she does literally threaten to blow you up within 30 seconds. So
all right. So we were talking about drones, though. Were you able to find that conversation, Torvald?
Yeah. So assisting against NPCs is not a thing, but against PvP targets, other players, is a thing, and it's not a bug.
That's
yeah.
We'll see. All right. And it's funny is that's one bullet point out of the whole patch notes today, and it's such a big change for this game. It is immensely consequential. There's a few things that surprised me. Oh, go ahead.
I'm not a big fan of the whole the things that they're doing with drones. I think it's a very specifically the aggress mechanics. I think that's basically looking at a bigger problem and being like, all right, let's take this little piece of duct tape and put it there, and hopefully, there's more you could do. There's other options, but this is kind of, I don't, the way I described it is, especially PvE and EVE, where people are using the AFK mechanics. Like the core problem is these mechanics they're AFKing them because they're not engaging or fun. People want to do stuff in EVE. They want to make progress in EVE while doing other stuff, watching a movie, working on homework, doing real work or whatever. And I feel like why target auto aggressive mechanics when you can go to the core and actually look at, obviously more work and resources, but
my problem is with assist in particular, because like first of all, drone bunnying in PvP has caused problems historically, and is the reason why you can only assist 50 drones onto a single person now, because of the old slow cats, right? But the thing is that like in most high-end team-based PvE, you end up with a drone bunny, and so the drone bunny focuses, because the drones themselves are not very valuable against any given rat. But the drone bunny maintains a cloud of fast drones, so that way the drone bunny's fighting against the smaller stuff while the bigger ships are fighting against the bigger stuff. And this really disrupts that. And I mean, like, I'm not saying that we can't find another way, but it really feels like you're cutting that gameplay without actually saving anything. I don't know that many people like using assist isn't AFK gameplay by definition, because you have to activate an offensive module against somebody in order for it to work. So you're not combating AFK gameplay. Most AFK and botters, I assume, wouldn't use giant groups of people that are all slaving their drones off. I don't hear about that much. So really, it's just the people that are using it as a legitimate feature and tool aren't able to do so anymore.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's happening.
I don't think going after nothing. There should be no goal where it's like we're trying to do. The botting problem is not gameplay. Isn't gameplay and botting. If you're going to go after botting, that the answer is not gameplay.
That's
the
true.
problem with, like, you can't go after, because then you're just hurting people, actual people, and bots are going to figure it out no matter what, because this isn't targeted towards botters, because oh fuck, now the botting program has to hit F.
Yeah,
like
but-
that's
I find this as very frustrating because, like I said, that is an entire role within a fleet that, even though, like I said, the fleet will survive, we will still figure out a way to kill the frigates. But like, that was a thing that somebody did.
yeah, it's inconvenient.
Also, I think.
There's,
Yeah, go ahead. Finish your thought.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's inconvenient, and it's just a easy way to fix a deeper problem.
Yeah. Incursions nerfed is something that Dan Cook brings up in chat, and I've heard that too. The assist is really important to incursions.
Yeah, well, when I said high-end group PvE, I meant incursions and invasions, basically.
Okay. So it hurts both equally, you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, because you've got these big ships that are designed to hit the big things, and then you usually have one ship or so that is more designed to deal with the smaller stuff, and that one is the one that is the drone bunny. It maintains, like, everybody assists to that guy.
Okay.
So, like, I had an EOS that was double web, extra range, and so, like, I had a totally different fight than everybody else.
All right, great. And speaking of drones, too, they put in a new drone. That is
Yes.
the salvage drone.
Two.
I wonder, this hasn't been answered. I think it has been answered through a CSM member. But if you say auto salvage, that's an NPC. It's a relationship with an NPC. You're sending a drone after NPC, but in this case, it's wreckage. Is this affected by the new changes for drones or not? Can you still auto salvage? And I've heard
You
yes.
can't. Yeah, you can.
You can't.
I did it earlier.
Oh, you good? Oh, great. So now that's confirmed. Good.
Yep, I didn't even think about it that way, but like, I had 3 Combat 2 salvage drones, and I didn't even assign them to anything, and I just because I hit what I do is I target a rat and then hit F. The 3 combat drones goes after the rat, and the 2 salvage drones just get the salvage repeatedly order.
And thank you, Jaliant and Draken there for confirming that as well. I think it's a very important thing because if you're running missions in a Marauder, that is exactly how you do it. You have a lot of salvage drones running around while you're pulling in wreckage with tractor beams, and your guns are wiping everything out. That's what makes them so effective in missions.
Yep. And then also there is, in addition to the 2 new salvage drone drones, there's also a new skill. There's the there's a salvage specialization skill. Salvage drone specialization skill, which allows you to use that T2 salvage drone.
Oh, fantastic. Right. And this is the first time that I know CCP has named a module after a player in a pretty direct way. Dunk Dinkle being somebody who comically campaigned for it and actually probably campaigned for it at meetings. And so they named the faction variant of a salvage drone after him. By
campaigned for it, you mean ran for CSM on the platform of salvage drone 2s.
Yeah. And the thing about it that cracks me up is, first of all, that's great that happened with Dunk. But it cracks me up that Suetonia said now when he gets into a PvP fight and he wrecks somebody, he's going to release the Dunk drone.
What was the actual reason they didn't have Salvage Drone 2 like all along? It's one of the most confusing things as a newer player. Like, you see Salvage Drone 1, which implies there's more than one, and then there isn't anything else. Why didn't they have it sooner? I've always been curious.
All Meta 0 is just blah, blah, blah 1. Even if there is no 2, like there's a Bastion 1. Slowly but surely people are like, there should be a Tech 2, and so, we get them. In this case, it's because of the balance between the use of salvage drones and the use of salvage like actual high slots.
Got it, yeah.
They wanted it to still be, a reason to use the salvage high slots.
Yeah, otherwise you just never fly on Noctis ever again, right? And you just, okay, that makes sense.
I'm known for taking some unpopular positions, so I'm going to take another one right now. And the whole thing about them naming the salvage drone after Dunk, I get it. It's a salvage drone. It's called Dunk. I love that relationship with Dunk and picking up salvage of somebody you just killed. So that works, and I'll just step back from it at that point. But I do want to talk about this. Dunk's a great guy. He's done a lot for the game. He's a great evangelist for the game and a good example to everybody. There have been a lot of Dunks in the past.
Sure.
And none of them have any modules named after them. And it feels very small to me to do that now. It's almost like when the Catholic Church, I'm Catholic, so I'm not making fun of everybody, decided that John Paul needed to be fast-tracked to sainthood, right? That feels a little bit small to me, right? Don't you have the age of centuries to work it out? Like we should have things that are done in a permanent way to the game, not something that we can self-reference in our own insular community, because then we disrespect the past, in my opinion.
Well, we do have a bunch of collector's items. I mean, obviously, they're not useful items that people see on the everyday.
Those are joke items. You can trash those if you don't like them. You get the jokes. It's a nice relationship with CCP. This is an item in the game. It's a little bit different.
There are some good examples of it, though. Like, for instance, the Entosis links. The faction Entosis links are named after the winners of the SOV challenge that happened on Sissy to test when they were testing Entosis. I'm trying to think of any other really solid examples. I don't know if I can think of one that was literally named after a player like this, but CCP has a long history of nodding to the efforts of their players directly and indirectly within game, and also this idea of within the parentheses that the name can sometimes be a bit more tongue-in-cheek depending on what the module is.
Slightly different, but if you go to Site 1, you can still see the list of all the people who donated to make that happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I see what Matterall's saying though. It's an item that because you got the Cadillac model or the monolith, and you've got other stuff, but this is something that people will see on a daily basis and use, and new players for years to come will be like, oh, I got my dunk drones. They'll never know that. So yeah, see, who knows? Maybe this is the first step towards that, to where, but yeah, I see where Matterall's coming from. It makes sense.
Dunk might be the safest person to do that for, because he's universally well liked, and just like Kribba used to be, but there's no Kribba thing.
I think there is, isn't there? Yes,
I think that's a collector's item.
You're right.
There's
it's not a real thing.
Yeah, there's Sort's Guide to Diplomacy. There's a lot of inside jokes that are items, but those are just, they're not useful in any way.
No items that'll be used for years to come.
Yeah.
But you don't do them like many of these items without doing the first one, right? Like if Eve's going to be expanding, which it looks like CCP are hoping to do over the next few years, this may just be the first of many named items that pay homage to people who have been in the game a long time.
And again, I just see this as just a continuation of what they've already done. They just had a good opportunity, and I think that the fact that he was a CSM member that did it.
Yeah, but that's like saying the Rubicon is just a river. It's not just a river. It's a point of no return, and I feel like that this is crossing the line in a way that hasn't been crossed before. It's not just a river.
Well, I'm going to go the other way and say that we should correct this and go back and release the faction. Magic school bus of the Bowhead.
Exactly.
Exactly. We need that.
Magic school bus.
Torvald,
yeah.
Make it happen.
You got it, bud. I'm on it.
Thanks.
Okay, and all I'm saying is if you go down that path, you make Eve feel smaller, in my opinion.
Do you, or do you add history to it? I try to talk from the new person perspective a bit. Yeah. I come here, there's this dunk salvage drone. What the hell is a dunk salvage drone? I go away, I find out, if I care about lore and where things came from, I go away and I unearth stuff about previous players. One thing isn't going to change the game, but if this is an ongoing thing, if many people get things named after them, this is something else that adds to. I think it makes it bigger. I think it gives me more things to understand and find and learn.
But not in the context of immersion, though. If you're talking about a role player that was doing a thing in the game and an item was named after them because the factory was saved by an action he did, it's all part of the canon. It's part of the immersive.
But the CSM is canon.
The CSM, is it canon?
Yes, they are an in-game entity, and they do in fact the CSM. Is the Council of Stellar Management is an entity that exists within the universe.
I did not know that it was considered.
Well, that's why you have the diplomatic shuttle, the Council of Stellar Management down its diplomatic shuttle. When they have the Council of Stellar Management, they post lore events that's basically saying that it's happening in game, and they've repeatedly referenced CSM discussions as if from an in-universe perspective. So the idea that Dunk would have lobbied for this in-universe as much as he did out-of-universe is absolutely makes sense to me. I also just looked up all of the Fortizars. The faction Fortizars were named after the name of the station that was first dropped of that type. So based on the player actions and based on the player names. But what I see here is that so these names that are attached to these modules in this universe are all point to some sort of history or some sort of reference as to why it is what it is, right? Like they're not supposed to have no meaning, but they've had meaning in universe, right? They mean something to the Serpentis, or they mean something because of this hero of Caldari history or whatever, right? But now, as time goes on, we are 20 years into the Empyrean Age. Now we are part of this universe's history, and more and more as time goes on, our marks are going to be part of this universe.
Very nice point. That changes things quite a bit. If CSM is part of the in-game canon and Dunk Dinkle is part of the in-game canon, even with that name, for God's sakes, then I understand it. Like, it makes sense. Like then it makes more worldly sense, and then the world doesn't feel like it's smaller.
Well,
I don't like the self-referencing.
Just remember,
is what I'm getting at. I don't like the self-referencing, because we're out here in the meta and we're players and we talk to each other and we're all a great big family, and you can see it when you go to any kind of a meetup. Everybody's a brother, whatever. But the self-referencing when it enters into the game, to me, feels like it's intruding on people's experience. Because some people don't get to go to meetups, right? That's expensive stuff. And why should the meetup affect the game? It's a different thing.
I mean, well, so like for instance with FanFest, actually all official EVE gatherings are also canonical in EVE.
Oh my
God. EVE Vegas occurs at the Grand.
Yeah,
go look at your T-shirt. It says what the YC year, and it says the Ground Tijon tournament at whatever the location is. I can't remember the casino's location.
I'm missing this whole existential relationship. Then I'm totally missing.
And the EVE Vegas or EVE FanFest has been given or has had different titles, but like remember when the Drifters were first basically dealt with, that was called the Symposium of Emergent Threats. So they try to tie this in pretty tight.
All right, Ashterothi.
EVE is real, man.
Ashterothi, you dunked Matterall. Let's move on.
It's all right. All right. So I think that's enough about the patch. Let's talk to our guests about our guest stuff.
All right.
So first and foremost, I'm actually going to start off with Lorinda because he was nice enough to come and hang out with us. And so you wrote an article for IGN about our current war.
Yep.
But I know for a fact that you're not actually playing EVE that much. Like you're not in the war, right?
I'm not in
the
war. Yeah, I'm a high sec player for the large part. I do some tourist trips into nullsec and get blown up occasionally, but I'm a high secker for the large part. Yeah. So
help me get from where you were to now. You're like you are the IGN EVE correspondent now. What's going on?
Not that
you also wrote an article on Chappie too, right?
No, I wrote the article on Niaja for PC Gamer.
That's what it was. Okay, and that was PC Gamer. So this is a different. Okay, cool.
But the two are linked. One got in touch with the other and said, "Hey, if you've got an EVE guy we can use," blah blah blah. So
you got a spare EVE guy.
I don't. My interest in this game has been around for years from articles like this one. Weirdly enough, so I got into EVE like many people did from reading this sort of stuff. And as soon as I started playing EVE, I mean, Ash will know that I spent a lot of time learning the lore, both the player lore and the background story of the PvE lore, and I just got a massive interest in it. When Ash says I don't play, I mean I play at least an hour or two every day. I just don't play. I'm not in the war like he says. I'm not on pings. I'm not.
That's a casual.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sort of by EVE standards I am a casual, but I do play the game an okay amount. But yeah, I got into this. I started writing because I was writing for Hearthstone. I messaged PC Gamer, said, "Hey, your EVE guys should get onto this Niaja stuff because EVE's going to change massively, and this is the sort of story the public love." And they said, "Well, my man's away. Do you want to write it?" So I went, "Yeah, of course I do. I love writing this stuff." So I wrote for PC Gamer, and then that transferred into IGN. I hope I've done a good job. I tried to call it down the middle. I wasn't responsible for the videos in the piece, by the way, but yeah, I tried to call it down the middle in the writing, at least.
At what point? What was the thing that made you go, "I need to write an article about what's happening in the war"?
I got a message from IGN saying, "Do you want to write an article?
Oh, wow.
We've got these people you can talk to," which was Matani, Vili, and CCP. I'm like, would I like to talk to Matani, Vili, and CCP? So 2 seconds later, I'd agreed to the article. Yeah, that was the easiest decision of my life.
So obviously, like, writing for Eve is incredibly difficult because of spin. So you said you worked really hard to get it down the middle. How was that process like when your sources were Vili and the Matani?
Right, and also my other sources being sort of this show and Ron's stream and various Imperium streams and so on. So every time you go through and you read a word like evil emperor, you sort of have to cross it out and start again and just keep doing stuff like that until you actually make it as neutral as possible. And then, you find a quote like that one, which has to go in red letters because it's amazing. And just trying to say, look, from the outside perspective, I want to give a feeling of who goons are and who the people are attacking them. But I don't want to relentlessly sort of beat the drum of, goons bad, which tends to be the narrative that every other place goes with. But also, you've sort of got to capture the characters, right? I mean, Mitani is a divisive character, to say the least. So you do have to sort of pay some nod to that. But keeping it neutral and doing that is quite hard.
Well, how many words was it? Looks pretty long.
I think it finished about 2,500. At one point, it was about 6,000.
Perfect.
I didn't know exactly what the editor would like, so I just wrote everything and said, edit it, go. That's the short version of what happened. 6,000
words down to 2,000. You must have cut a lot out, but
yeah, we conversed a lot about, look, this is the big Keepstar battle, and so on. And it was like, well, which things do we want to focus on the most? And it comes down to editors know what their readership want better than writers do. So
do they get to tell? Do they tell you what the metrics are on how many views it gets and stuff like that? You don't have to tell us, but you know how well it does?
I've only ever been told once before, and that was the PC Gamer one, and that article went well. I'm not going to say what, but that article was good.
Yeah, okay. How has the reception for this been so far today?
It's been good. It's been very good. Surprisingly good, actually. A lot of the Hearthstone friends who, they're going to compliment it because they're friends, but they usually just keep their heads down and let me do my Eve thing and leave it alone. I've had several messages, one from a journalist saying, hey, this is a really good article. I want to play Eve now, which is the point, right? Yes. I want people to play Eve. That's the whole point of writing these things.
Well, you didn't put your buddy code in, so you fail completely, but
I was going to say, man, two things. One is your article is literally going to cause people to play EVE Online for the first time. So huge kudos to that. And two, you need to shoot a message to those editors and put your buddy code at the very end of that or somewhere in there.
I don't know how that works, actually, because that might end up as being conflict of interest at that point. Like, I deliberately didn't apply for EVE Partner for the same reasons, even though I do stream EVE occasionally. So
yeah,
I want to keep it. But if I'm going to write more EVE things in the future, I'd rather be at least vaguely not affiliated.
I would say that you should at least talk to CCP about it, because like the buddy program is such an important thing that like having an affiliate link and CCP would probably want to track what new players come from this link anyway. So I think if you talk to all the parties, you could probably figure out something.
That makes sense. I just want to address what Dirk's saying in chat, actually. There is still this problem with EVE articles that has happened since the dawn of time, where the comment section is, this sounds great, but I don't want to play that game. Like, they'll log in and they'll go, this isn't for me. And that's something that is still a thing to this day. That is definitely a thing that happens.
Yeah, there's a meme with that, where it was someone read an article and then the next picture is them sitting there with a venture and like this little, exclamation point above their head, like, yay.
Yeah, there's this massive war going on, and there's someone shooting a rock on their first day saying, this isn't what I expected to happen.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, this article is huge. Stuff like this is literally what draws people in. When I tell people in real life that I play EVE Online, the first thing they think of is, oh, I saw this article about that game, or I read this, and like that's what they know. And so this stuff, while this is a very small part of EVE, or technically large, but it's kind of a small part of EVE in the grand scheme of things, it has such huge value for, capturing people's attention, getting them to play the game, getting them, or just bringing them into the community. Hell, people read this and go straight to Reddit, and they'll never log into Eve, but they'll be on the Reddit,
Yeah, I did everything I could not to put a dollar value in there, and here we are with a headline with a dollar value.
your editor got
It's like the Eve article cliche number one is it has to have the effective dollar value in the title somewhere.
Yep.
Well, that's for
I want to circle back.
That's for relating
Sorry?
to an audience doesn't play. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to circle back on that whole like negative comment thing to Eve, because this is a phenomenon that I've seen a lot, and I saw it most notably with Valkyrie, when there was an incredibly positive video that was made by some YouTubers playing Valkyrie to show it off, and yet all of the comments were just about how Eve is spreadsheets in space and Psychopath Simulator and all the memes that we've always heard. It reminds me of a video on YouTube by a guy named Matthew Colville, who does some great YouTube videos about like storytelling and D&D and stuff like that. But either way, he has a video called Shibboleth. And there's, I'm not going to get all the details correct, but there was this like these, I think, Jewish cultures, two different Jewish cultures that were in conflict with one another. And the way that they could tell each other apart was because one side pronounced Shibboleth one way and the other side pronounced it a different way. And it's one of those things that if you learn how to pronounce something, that's what you hear. And so you can't actually physically train yourself to hear and say something a different way past a certain age. And so they were able to use this as a call and response, basically a test for loyalty within the community. And so what the word shibboleth means doesn't actually matter. It's the fact that the idea of the shibboleth is like the cultural test to see if you are part of the group. And so what he was talking about is like when somebody talks about something on the internet in particular, there's always this immediate flood of comments that are very generic, never have anything to do with the actual conversation, but just the topic. So like anytime anything about Game of Thrones or George R. R. Martin gets posted, then there's a bunch of stuff about whether or not he's going to finish the next book before he dies. Like no one's talking about that. That isn't what we were dealing with. But that's just what somebody says, or, even all the way back to just saying first at the beginning of a YouTube video. Right. And it's just a way of saying like, I know what to say in this position culturally. Yeah. So it's like these people that are saying these things about Eve, it's not even like they have this strong opinion about it. It's just like, oh, we're talking about Eve. It's time to clown about what it is, or these things about it. And I think that the only thing that's going to happen is over time, we're going to continually change that image just by being, different. And it has shifted over the last few years, especially with things like, the Drifter attack, Chappie's birthday, and other things that get us into the news without it just being, X player screwed over X player or, whatever that reinforce those views. So it's a journey.
It's just the password, right? To say like, I'm in on the joke or I'm in on the thing. It's
right. I know what to say.
Yourself. Yeah, I got this. I was into them before they were popular.
Exactly.
But they don't understand the game at all in the way that we understand it. But you know what? That happens a lot in EVE Online too. I think it's just a way that society works, as you were pointing out, of those secret signals, the secret language, the inside jokes, the inside references. Look at whenever I see, it's funny, and I'm going to come off really bad in this show, but I'm not trying to talk anyone down. But when I see like new shows come up, people are nervous, and because they're occupying a talking space like we're doing, there are people looking at us, listening to us because we have something to say. We better have something to say that actually works, that it's actually added value to their listening time. And people, that's a lot of pressure on somebody who's just starting out. So they end up going with a lot of the same cliches that we hear, the dismissing of this, the dismissing of that. Oh, don't go into wormhole 1 or 2. There's no money in it. You got to go to 6 or do nothing, And there's a lot of that dismissive quality to other people's gameplay in order to establish yourself as an authority. And that one true authority is PvP first and PvP only, and that's it, and that kind of stuff. So It's interesting to find the newer people who have something to prove using a lot of the old cliches, basically.
Yeah, cliches cater to the lowest common denominator, and usually the truths are simple and crude and potentially even out of date, especially in Eve, in a game that has been changing as much as it has in the last 2 years. Like, and this is, I guess, a warning to all of you. If you think that, you know, those things are, to an outsider, is wrong or whatever, like, we all echo incredibly, like, basic, maybe not incorrect, but without sufficient nuance information about Eve to each other. Like, all kinds of things are, you know, people, especially when it comes to like things like Poshfin or certain mechanics of the game, the general opinion, the general knowledge of how Eve works, the sound bites that get kicked around between people, usually doesn't speak to the full nuance of how things are. And more importantly, those who go beyond that, when somebody says, "Oh, there's nothing there. There's no ISK there. There's nothing. There's nobody doing anything there," you should hear the potential of an opportunity, because people, you know, when people say nobody mines in low sec, well, guess what? People still need minerals that only come from low sec. You know, when people say nobody does faction warfare, well, guess what? People are still killing stuff out there, and they're having a lot of fun. And only when you go past where people say people don't go, that's when you will find the real riches in Eve.
Way off course here, but last point on this. Isn't it interesting that maybe CCP has realized they hit a plateau with that line of thinking, and they're like, we've got to turn this game around, not backwards, but just we've got to make it evolve in a different way. And that's why you see such a massive shift in emphasis on high sec, for instance, and some of the stuff going on there, as opposed to null sec. And you know, that whole thing that happened with Brave, but even before that, maybe with Test, and even before that, maybe with Goon Swarm. Goon Swarm is a different thing, but Brave for sure said, hey, don't waste your time in high sec or low sec. Those things are dead. Go right to the main stuff. You want to get to these 700k battles, follow me. I know how to get there. And with Karma Fleet now, and with Horde and all that kind of stuff, we'll get you right into that action. And it seems like CCP's like, yeah, that kind of ran its course, and we got what we got, and now we need to totally say this game is more than that, and they're changing the whole design pattern to it. Anyway,
something I think is massive that came up when I spoke to them as well. I chatted with them quite a lot about it. Was now that their members can actually play the game like legally themselves. So the CCP devs are actually playing in the game, in the world, affecting the outcomes of things, having their own fun. I think they're in a much better space to actually do all that stuff, to present it to the players. Oh, look, I wanted to do this thing and I couldn't. Why couldn't I? They're actually learning their own game themselves and what they like and what they don't. And they're going in free ways. It's not like they're not being assigned roles. They're not being told, hey, this player has to do this thing. Each dev is just playing the game. And when you play a game, you get your own thoughts on it. Just because you're designing it at the same time, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Like, I'm glad they're playing. It was really obvious how keen they all were.
There's a lot of things that you don't figure out until you're in the weeds. Like, I've looked at stuff and on paper it makes sense, and then as soon as I start doing it, it starts becoming immediately obvious, all of the different problems. But until you get in there, sorry.
Yeah, no. Let me just correct something. Brave wasn't the one saying that we'll usher you to the big stuff. They were, you know, when they were low sec, they were different. But when they actually became Hero Coalition, then it kind of became like, yeah, follow us into null sec, and we'll play the game. So no disparaging Brave necessarily, but that's definitely what Brave set an example that new players could be effective in null sec in mass if they use electronic warfare. And so everybody was trying to get Brave to join their team. When they couldn't do that, they broke Brave by recruiting their members. And so you had someone like Pork Butt moving people over to Karma Fleet and creating that. And that's now the biggest group inside of Goon Swarm. And you had Travis move everybody to Horde. And that's one of the biggest alliances in the game. So they definitely, you know, like a vacuum cleaner, sucked up those new players. You don't need any experience. You don't need any skill points. There's no barrier of entry. Come out and play with us. That's what I was talking about. Brave didn't necessarily start that, especially when they were in low sec. So I'm not blaming them or anything. Okay.
The really scary thing about that, though, like the thing that people don't even think about until secondary fact. I've spent most of my Eve career rehabilitating ex-null seckers, so kind of got intimately familiar with this. But what actually happens is when you take a new player and you tell them that all of the tutorials and all of the high sec content and all the stuff that was designed to be their speed isn't worth it, is worthless, is stupid, and all of the other stuff is worthless and not worth their time. And the most exciting thing, just skip all the rest of the game. The game is 20 years old. There's no need for all the rest of this stuff. The only thing to do in the game is big nullsec block warfare. So come on in, and then they come on in, and they may not even have enough skills to do their stuff effectively. But either way, the solutions in nullsec are generally super efficient. Read super boring. They've been optimized, and so you're given these effectively AFK strategies in order to make your money over time, and to come into these giant fleets that are tie-dyed all the time, reinforcing that this is the best that Eve has to offer. Everything else is worse than this.
So, do you know of any high-sec corps that could solve this problem for people?
Well, I mean, this is the reason why Convocation of Empyreans was formed, really. But what I'm saying is that like. What ends up happening is that player never explores those other aspects of the game because they were just hand-wovenly told that those aren't worth it. And if those are worse than this, if this is the best and this is boring and awful, then I'm not going to waste my time with any of the rest of it. And they wash out. And then they show up on my stream 2 years later and they go, "What the hell is this? I didn't even know Eve had this." And then I go, "Yeah, it's had this for a while."
All right. Let's move on, but finish up with the article before you move on, because I'm sorry, I've been taking and derailing like crazy today. I'll stop.
It's a good conversation, though.
I know. I love that. Right? I love that.
Are you planning a follow-up on this as the war continues on? Are you taking notes?
Yeah, I mean, I watch so much Eve that I constantly jot things down just in case I need them at a later date. Anyway, like even if I wasn't writing articles, that's sort of what I was doing before anyway. I'm trying to play 17 years of catch-up, so I need to cut corners to some degree. But yeah, I'm hoping they'll have me back. I have no idea if they will or not. I'm a freelancer, so the industry sort of happens when it happens at you. Right. But yeah, I'll be hoping to write another article about it once the war is over, if the war is ever over, because this might go a long time, I suspect, before anyone actually declares that they've won, or before anyone is accepted that they've won. I think everyone declares they've won every day, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a very smart point there. I haven't read this article yet, but I am sure with your enthusiasm, you're going to jump over one of the hurdles that the press has with EVE Online, and that is that they can't seem to understand the concepts well enough to really write about them. And for EVE players, we forgive that a lot because we understand not everybody can understand EVE quickly. But I bet you are going to be able to surpass that because you have such interest in the game itself.
I mean, I don't think it made it easier or harder because I have some understanding of the game. Like when you start writing about corporations and alliances and super blocks and coalitions and everything, you end up in a mess of words if you're not careful. But I think the editors did a good job of. I sort of said, I at points I just went, "Here is the information. I can't do this bit. You need to help me," because I'd write them 3 paragraphs and say, "Sort of pick one." Yeah, these are the ways I can write about this. What would you like? Because it's just so hard to narrow down all of those things that Eve has into a simple thing. Just explaining why a corporation becomes into part of an alliance, into a coalition, into a super block, and what all that means is a ridiculous number of words.
You're right,
and very boring.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, Muffin Mean says the deepness of Eve doesn't lend itself to writing about it or the masses easily. That's probably true, isn't it?
Well, what I'm hoping to do, and I think they did it to some degree in here, I haven't checked all of the links out, is have a thing that every Eve article they have can link to that says, "This is Eve, read this if you don't know what Eve is first, and then go back to the article."
CCP really needs to, well, they have a couple of good YouTube videos that they've put out in the last year or so as like ad/introductions to Eve.
Right. Okay, let's move on to Torvald. This is really interesting too, and we've had him here for a bit.
Yes. So Torvald, for those of you who don't know, before he lost ships in the Abyss, lost ships in Lowsec with us,
Really?
doing faction warfare. Yeah. Torvald's like my prodigy. No, I'm just kidding. And he's become so much more. No. So yeah, man. So you, as a CSM member, obviously you support like the Abyss PvP arena, but I've known that secretly you were just going to be our new faction warfare representative. So how has that gone?
Man, it's hilarious because from the beginning I started campaigning for CSM and everyone's like, "Oh, that Abyssal guy," and it's like, I've started EVE Online in 2009, and I think a grand total over the past 11 years, I have 6 total years in faction warfare. And yes, I've flown for a little over 2 years. Ash, I flew in Adron Robotics. That 2.5 years was my favorite time in EVE, and a great corp, a great alliance. We were living the life, but I learned about a lot of the problems with faction warfare, especially being in an alliance that big. And actually, I tweeted a photo the other day of 2 years ago at EVE Vegas 2018. A couple fed up guys. We were in Vegas, and I sat down with CSP Rise. We had his ear for like 30 minutes, and that was like the start of my faction warfare crusade. And coming on to faction warfare this year, or coming on the CSM this year, I had a couple areas that I wanted to focus on, and number one was faction warfare, because that place, like, that's where my heart and soul is. Like, I'm known for abyssal stuff, but my heart and soul is, and the reason why I'm in faction warfare or abyssal stuff is because faction warfare is in a kind of crap state. So when we started CSM, it was kind of, the first couple of months was kind of like figuring things out, especially for me being new, kind of learning how things work, and then who's got what on their mind. And it started to come together that Gobbins, the Pandemic Horde guy, he had an interest in low sec. He had the low sec daily life, and Phantomite cared about alliance content and income. And then myself, I'm just a faction warfare junkie who loves that shit more than anything. And so we started a little plan amongst ourselves to talk and come up with ideas. And, it's cool because we each got our own little area that kind of collectively comes together to low sec. And I thought that was just like a crazy coincidence where each of us had our vested interest, and all together, it formed together into kind of cohesive, like, here's this entire area of the space and here's all the problems. So we started poking around a lot, started Dopamine, CSP Dopamine. He's been incredible helping us. And, I'm pretty sure we got on his nerves, but man, we were poking at him so much, and we were trying to get that, get some kind of movement on it. And he finally, started working on us. I can promise, like, this isn't like, I'm not going for CSM next year, so this isn't some kind of freaking campaign shit, but I can promise not a single CSM meeting has gone by where I haven't mentioned something faction warfare wise or whatnot. And so, we really pushed for it, and we got the meeting that we had been like dreaming of, and we had worked with CSP Dopamine to kind of figure out what kind of information we need to present. And when I first started it, it was more the slideshow you see, it was more of what I wanted to see in faction warfare. And through talking with a couple of people at CCP, and especially Dopamine, I realized, that's not what we need to be doing. What we need to be doing is focusing on the issues, and, what kind of people are interested in faction warfare and low sec, and why are these issues, and how are these issues? So it's funny, if you look, I had a presentation a while back that I've edited a lot. Now I've got the final product, but yeah, it's shifted more towards, and it's crazy being on CSM, because you learn what kind of information you need to present and how you need to present it. Like I said, the presentation I had a couple months ago is completely different from what you see now. But yeah, we finally got that meeting with some pretty notable people, that CCP Burger, CCP Muppet Hunter, a couple of the producers, all the producers really. We got that meeting just because we were annoying and persistent as shit. And everything. Sorry, go ahead.
I remember, I think I heard about that faction warfare meeting that you were talking about. It might be that one. It might have been a different one, from before. And if I remember correctly, from what I heard from people, they were very distraught from that meeting. What I'd heard was that CCP, they walked into it, and all they found out was that CCP had no ideas at all for faction warfare. This was 2016, 2017, I remember, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people got disheartened. How do you feel like this meeting went? So
I will go ahead and say I spent quite a bit of time poking individual people in private messaging and saying, hey, what do you think? What's your opinions? What's your knowledge? And it seems like one of the issues is the fact that there's this, putting a definition behind low sec and faction warfare is really hard. And, even though CSP collective, their company, like all the individual people that work there have different opinions, and depends on what their status is within the company and what they get who gets to work on what. It's a whole, everyone jokes about the sausage factory, and I never the first couple months, I didn't know what the hell that meant. People kept saying the sausage factory. And then, I get into this situation like, oh, that makes sense now. But from the meeting, it was a really, man, it's hard to talk about something. You guys kind of like filter.
Yeah, obviously don't do anything NDA. But I guess my question is, did they seem receptive and did they seem proactive? Did they seem like there's something that's happening?
Yes. Well, okay. So nothing, and that's a big, that's something I really got to emphasize is nothing. This meeting, as explained by all, CCP and, was clearly defined to us, like nothing is guaranteed or promised from this. This is all, This is literally players just bringing shit to them and talking to them. So, and that's something I'm really emphasizing and what I'm trying to get to people is like, nothing's promised, nothing's for sure. But the reaction from them, like, I've walked away from some CSM meetings like, why the fuck do I play this game? Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've had some moments where I'm like, this shit sucks. This meeting specifically was probably the best moment I've had on CSM because it was really every CCP member in that meeting was very receptive. They were, there's back and forth communication. There was great discussion. There was, there was knowledge. There were, there's some who knew about stuff but wanted to know more. There's some who didn't know much about stuff. And so from my perspective, just, their reaction to it was really, it's really good. Not, like I said, not saying that they're going to work on anything or promise anything, but it definitely wasn't one of those situations where, someone wanted to get up and walk away. They were paying attention. it was a great discussion.
Well, and I assume that they also might have brought up some of the blockers or whatever potentially. But my question is, how confident are you that there will be some sort of faction, like well-structured faction warfare work in the next chunk of time? Just to be super vague about it. Do you feel like they're motivated to do that, or do you feel like it's 100% on the back burner?
I mean, not even just saying this because like NDA stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I've been, it sucks because like I'm glad I was able to. I talked to CCP Dopamine, got the clearance to give all this information, and we're still actively working stuff, and it's kind of slowed down. But like I said, from that presentation, the engagement from them, it's hard to explain, but like their engagement with me, their discussions, their interest, it was something that they were, it was a really good meeting. And, if we see like, whether we see something in the next 6 months, my big thing coming into all of this is I don't want Band-Aids and duct tape. And I tried to emphasize that in the meeting. Like this is
That's actually one of the problems. Sorry, I want to jump in on that. That's actually one of the problems that Faction Warfare has actually had in the last 6 to 8 months or so. There have been several significant quality updates to Faction Warfare fixing long systemic issues. But the problem is that they're piecing them out so small that no one change seems like the Faction Warfare update. And so it's not actually getting buy-in from the player base. So while some of the problems have been fixed, they were fixed in such a way that didn't actually reattract or reignite the conflicts of old. So we really need something that's like, emphasized. And the screen up there now, the dream. So one thing about the whole presentation is the focus was towards issues and player base, but I put in a lot of stuff in there that like I've dreamed of over the years that I would love to see. Now this isn't something, and in the meeting I explained to them, this is not the low sec faction warfare player base speaking. This is Torvald Uruz saying, hey, this is what I would love to see. So I got I put ideas out there, but ultimately what happens is up to them and what they do. So my main purpose going into that meeting, my goal was just to get that information to them, let them know the top 3 or 4 big issues that really make faction warfare kind of dead fish in the water kind of, so to speak. And, I've got a lot. I spew this stuff all the time on my stream about dreams I have for faction warfare. And, everyone's got their opinions and ideas, but we can all, from what I've gathered between my personal time and, Ash, we lived in low sec, we did faction warfare, but we had to have null sec territory. That was one thing that I really hammered away at is that, alliances can't live there. Like people can't operate there. People cannot solely live out of there and function properly. Like we had to have null sec space. Different issues like that. That was my whole goal going into that, was just to really hammer that message away and then really talk about what kind of lifestyle and play style faction warfare supports and what it should, the ideal,
low-sec is more of a low-sec faction warfare is more of a shorter term, even though it's got long-term possibilities, shorter term, smaller, shorter gameplay opportunities than other places like nullsec or wormholes. So it's like I had to sell it, not sell it, but I had to tell CCP like, hey, these are the, and they're a company, so it makes sense. That was a part that was a thing that I really struggled with trying to understand whenever they were asking me questions. But they're a company that need to know why they need to work on a product, and it's my job to tell them why they need to work on a product. I don't need to tell them what they need to do with the product, but I need to tell them, hey, here's what you could gain from this, so to speak.
Sell them on the product. Yeah. So hold on. Did this meeting happen because they wanted to hear about it, or did you bug them enough until they're fine? They're like, fine, you can have an hour.
It's funny they mention that because it's kind of a mixture of both. So I would, Phantomite, Gobbins, and myself, we were very pingy. We got our own little group set up, and we were poking them, and we were, CCP dopamine never ever acted annoyed for one bit. But there were times, there'd be like once a week we'd poke them, be like, hey man, what's the status on this, and what could we do? It all started because we had a meeting, and then one day we were like, hey man, this is what we want. How can we make this happen as CSM? What could we do? And he told us what we could do. So we started, getting our presentations together, and then we started poking them more. And then I remember we had a meeting with like the CCP leadership. We've had a couple meetings with them. And in one of the leadership meetings, there's a couple of the producers, and I blurted out like, hey, could I, would you guys be interested in hearing about this? Can we catch your ear for a couple minutes? And they were, it's crazy because, like I said, the reaction to it was very positive. Like, CCB Berger, a couple of y'all know him from these meetings. He's an incredible person. And I remember I went to him specifically, and he was like, yeah, man, I'd love to hear it. Let's hear your proposal. And it was definitely a mixture of us poking and, being annoying, so to speak. But it was also like they were down for it and they were excited to hear it. So
I should say Berger is one of 3 executive producers.
Yeah, we had a meeting, and I just, we explained to him, and he was one of the people in that meeting, along with a couple other producers, and they're the people that we needed to get our case to. And I've had, it's a really good year for me on CSM because like I had a list going into this year with like my CSM wish list, and the last thing on my list was faction warfare. And even though it's not done, I've gone as far as I can go. And now all there's left to do from here is just to keep getting updates and, hey, is there any traction behind this? So
what about faction warfare as eclipsed by the Triglavian situation where you pick a side there and you fight for one side or the other? And has it overlapped?
So this is actually funny because I'm very, as this all played out, the whole invasion and Triglavian invasion and, what that's kind of done, it's actually hurt faction warfare a lot. You can see from recent graphs. And it's funny because I didn't know that, I didn't see this coming, but once we got to the conclusion, I kind of looked at it, and that was one of my low points. Like, well, as someone who has dreams for faction warfare and low sec, I saw this new area being created, and I literally sat there looking at my computer like, what the hell is this? Like, I'm literally putting in all these hours and dreaming of a better low sec, and then there's this whole other region you guys bring out. That was actually a very bad time for me when that came out, because I was just like, I lost a lot of hope being on a faction warfare crusade basically. But the invasion, in my mind, and people, I've seen comments where people disagree with this, the invasion, there's a lot of inspiration there. Mainly in the fact that the invasion is if you ever went to a system that was invaded, there is so much activity. Like, there is NPCs, they were just doing shit. Like, there were NPCs mining, anchoring structures, they were fighting, and there's all this stuff going on. And then you go to low sec, where there's the 4 major empires, 2 major empires at war, and you've got one little NPC in a military complex. And I'm like, what the hell is this? But there's, there's a lot of inspiration.
Like Gomer
Something
Pyle. Go ahead.
Well, something that struck me when you were having that discussion, I'd already thought of this as well, is during the invasion stuff, the tools came into place that could help faction warfare. So you'd go to an invaded system, like, here's the Trig channel, here's the Edencom channel, talk to somebody. Wouldn't it be good to go to a Galente versus Amar border, go into the system and you get a pop-up, this is a contested system, would you like to talk to one of these two sides? Here's the two channels, go for it.
Yeah. Well, when you join a militia, there is a militia channel.
No, but before that,
I understand. When you
militia,
come in, like as you navigate through something to flag you that something's important going on. I agree.
Yeah. But this actually says, do you want to join a militia? And then they cart you off into their channel and indoctrinate you and stuff.
See, I had a different approach to that, because one of my was something that I think is a gold mine of opportunity for new player retention, and just like I've actually used this, and people will hate me for this, but I go back to World of Warcraft because that's a big game that everyone knows, and you've got the Horde and the Alliance. How many people in World of Warcraft are die hard for their faction? You've got this major group and you want to represent them. You want to be a part of them. And then you come to Eve, and I know Eve is as a sandbox, obviously that makes sense, but you've got this major empire that you're a part of and you want to represent them in faction warfare, but there's nothing. And, there's ways you could, get that kind of bridge between high sec. There could be situations in high sec where there's something that pushes you towards faction warfare. There's a situation that happens, right out the gate through the tutorial. There's situations that could happen where, it kind of points the player in that direction. You're a Caldari pilot, you end up in a Caldari system, and there's a little Galente, problem. And then you get that NPC's like, hey, this is an issue. Do you want to help us fight this shit off? Go to this area and go do this,
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
Yeah. And you and I have talked a lot about faction warfare and stuff. And so, I mean, first of all, Poshvin and what was going on with Triglavians had basically been unfolding over the course of 4 years. So pretty sure they weren't going to be like, oh, Torvald wants faction warfare, so we're going to pump the brakes on that. But what I actually found was, so while interest dropped in faction warfare, what I really saw was that in faction warfare has basically been taken over by people that are doing it for money and for fights, not for loyalty, right? While there is an interest, and actually on the Amar Mimitar side, there are definitely role players that like are hardcore on either side. One of the reasons why faction warfare isn't working very well right now is because the people that engage with it are engaging with it as a money-making and a content-creating engine first, and not as an opportunity to work for the Galente or work for the Caldari. So in a lot of ways, the Triglavians hit that same beat, but do it better. And so if anything, what it does is it shows that's where people's interests are at, right? Like I'm reasonably sure that if Galente had just as much support for being able to work with them as the Trig does, then there will be people that will want to go and be part of that. Just like there are people that are willing to go through everything that they're willing to go through in order to be part of Poshvin now. And the other thing is that having talked to CCP quite a bit about this, while I know that while I have not heard of any active, like, I'm working on this to make the faction warfare this, but there is an extremely high, there's been, if anything, Invasions has reinvigorated interest in doing something within faction warfare within CCP.
Yeah, it's been, and I've talked to them about that, and it's clear that, they've thought while going through that process, like, hey, this could be good in faction warfare. One of the big hits was Ikoria, and I never noticed this till like last week. If you look at the region map and you look at Black Rise, which we're really familiar with because we lived there for a long time, I think it was September of this year, there was a huge drop off in amount of kills. And we're talking, this was a region that normally had more than 20,000 kills per month. And then they cut off Ikoria, the invasion did. And now it's, the last 2 or 3 months, it's been below 10,000 people dying every month. And it's that was one of those that really, kind of like stuck out to me, where I saw that number, and you just go through the historical numbers. And, while the invasion stuff was really cool and interesting content,
I would argue that that's a sign that there should be more things that happen. Yeah, like a change occurred, but like a different change could have a different effect. So this is what I would say is that this demonstrates to me that these kinds of shifts change the interest areas of different places. And I them experimenting with that.
One of the
Yeah, I mean,
things,
something that happened with the
Okay,
Twigs thing is it felt like if your side lost, it would matter. Whereas in Faction Warfare, I don't get a pop-up when I log in if there's a Minmatar saying, well, you can't go shopping in Rennes today because you lost a fight last night. Like, not that you'd want to go in Rennes anyway, but you get the point.
Well, you can't dock in stations. So if a system falls, then you won't be able to dock in that station. But there are ways. But again, if you look at
no
it,
one cares about outside of Faction Warfare. That's the problem.
right. Well, more importantly, you can always use alts to deal. Like there are other ways to deal with it. That's what I'm saying. Like if you treat it like a game, then it's too easy to like undermine most of what makes Faction Warfare really cool. It really takes a committed interest in like being part of your team, but that has eroded over time, and so CCP needs to do something to rebuild that emphasis. And you see, like I said, you see some of this on the, especially on the Amar Mimitar side of things, with like the Flowspin conflict and Electus Matari and several of the other guys over there. You see some pretty good engagement with that. But ultimately, like I see that as players doing something with a husk of a system.
well, speaking of mattering, though, in the beginning, not the beginning, but the beginning of a game for players, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was this thought that you would end up doing tutorials that would naturally want to lead you into faction warfare. That was something that you could see happening. It didn't seem to go that way. And talking about things that decisions you make early in the game, like what race you pick and what what is it? I guess not tradition,
Ancestry.
but
Bloodline.
Bloodline. No, the other thing right after Bloodline is your, like if you're
School.
Kentucky
Academy.
Artist. Yeah, I think they've taken that out, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't in the patch notes, but recently they've taken away your.
Oh, I see. I remember what you're talking about. So like, so you'd be a true Amar or a Patriot or a
Heredity.
I actually no. They didn't because they just changed all the verbiage. So I don't think that they took it out.
I changed
they
Drifter
changed
into a Roma for clarification's sake.
That's right. Yeah, it was called one of them was called a drifter, a Mimitar culture, whatever they're called. It was called a drifter, but that now has been changed to a roamer, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So it seems to me that what they're doing is taking the opposite approach. Since they can't make that stuff weave into the game like it could have, loyalty to your race, loyalty to your, or even the characteristics that you adopt early on, you're making decisions about how to role play yourself through this universe. And then you realize it doesn't matter one bit because you can fly any ship and you can work for anybody you want, et cetera, et cetera.
It matters if you want it to matter.
Well, okay. But if they take away the trappings of that, you're gonna have to make up more because the game is going to give you less to work with. If they take away heredity and all that stuff. But the point is, maybe they're basically saying they can't actually commit to that. So instead they do the reverse. They say, let's take a lot of that off. You're just a capsuleer and you work for anybody that'll hire you. Maybe they go the other way. Why should you belong to a certain empire if you're a capsuleer? You're not even affiliated with them. Like you're completely different. You're a hired gun. And this is a different species.
They're actually talking about completely redoing the MPE, moving everybody to Uli. So everybody starts out in Uli, and then make it so that like, well, you make your avatar right away. Because I actually talked to the CCP Burger about this. Apparently, they did some A/B testing. And if you don't do the avatar creation first, there's this massive drop off, like because people just don't associate themselves with the ship. So that process of making the avatar causes people to stick. So you don't want to like skip that as part of the
the investment begins, right?
Right, exactly. You start thinking about who you are. But one of the things that they were thinking about doing is selecting your affiliation at the end of the tutorial and make it so that like everybody's just like a brand new capsuleer. It doesn't matter what race you came from. But then once you finish your tutorial, then you decide, I want to be a Kaldari. I want to be a Blood Raider. I want to be, whatever it is. But they obviously haven't done that yet. But CCP Burger seems super into that idea.
Yeah, but it sounds like it doesn't work. You just said people drop off if they're not making the investment.
No. What he was saying was, no.
Asking that question sounds too important too early. Is that right, Ash?
It was sculpt character, then do MPE, and then at the end of the MPE, then there's a process to join a faction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, one of the most asked questions from brand new players creating an account is, which race do I go for? You know,
Right.
That's a huge dilemma for them, and they kind of get stuck on that part, and you know, maybe they regret it later. But that's definitely a dilemma. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Well, it does two things. One, it may be a blocker for people where they feel like they need to make the right answer and they can't. And then there's the second one, which is when they realize that it doesn't have a practical knowledge, which actually sets up it basically makes it so that the very first thing that they learn about EVE Online is that they're going to be set up and the choices don't matter, which is actually a really terrible thing to teach as their first thing. So it would make sense to push that later to make it so that you can join a group through your effort and through maybe standings increases, just like Triglavians, right? Like you don't start as a Triglavian, but you can earn your way to becoming more and more Triglavian. It doesn't change your title or whatever. I think it should, but maybe they'll get there someday. But I think that they're going to be moving towards like you join a faction as opposed to you're born a faction.
Right. Well, it would be, it's interesting because everybody's a clone, right? So if you're going to clone into a body, it's going to be a pristine body if they can shape flesh that way. So why do people have scars? Why do they even have like all this?
Well, you
stuff?
choose them. Yeah, I mean, those are all just options given to you by the cloning. Those are cosmetic options because some capsuleers want to be spooky.
I'm kind of with CCP Rise on this. Everybody should have the ability to be a baseliner, which means you're not immortal. And then when you blow up, you get scarred up. Like, I kind of like that idea. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm off topic. But we are pretty much at the end of the show here. Do we have anything else, Ash, that we needed to pick up?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over some smaller points towards the end and talk about. We have this video. Tactical Supremacy released a video. A Tickle Day Out with Simple Supremacy. Looks like a pretty good video. In addition, as I said, CCP, as part of the Japanese client localization, they have released 3 new starter packs. Only the most expensive starter pack at $100 has free skill points has skill points with it, with 250,000 skill points. None of the others have any skill points with it. So with the Galactic one, which is $99, it comes with 90 days of Omega with multiple character training. I assume that's for all 90 days. So that's 3 months of Omega, 3 months of MCT, 1100 Plex, which is another 2 months and a little bit more of playtime, and then a Cerebral Accelerator. Then the Caracal, Gnosis, Mauler, Stabber, and Vexer skins for the new Zakura Shimiyu, which is the Rose Blossoms skin that I was talking about earlier that has a particle effect on those. And then you get the men and women's suit with the 250,000 skill points. The Solar skin, which is kind of weird in the fact that it's listed as being $98, but then cut down to $60, but is really just kind of $60 worth of value. Comes with, I think, 1 month of game time with an MCT, 500 Plex, a standard Cerebral Accelerator, the Catalyst, Coercer, Cormorant, and Thrasher skin for the Zakura skins, and the men and women's suit. And then finally, the $10 set has 7 days of Omega, 10 Plex, the suits, and the Incursus and Merlin version of the skin. And the Frigates version of the skin, I don't think has the particle effect, if that matters to anybody. I think that's it for those. Oh, also these are starter packs that are limited time offer. Obviously, so if you've gotten one of those previous starter packs, I think you could still get these, including the 250,000 skill points, but that's a lot just for $250,000. And then I think it's January 20th or something like that, January 24th, somewhere in there, these things are going to go away and probably only like restore back to the old original starter packs. This is an interesting idea. I wonder if they're going to keep playing with these kinds of kits or packs that come as part of events, or to celebrate certain things. They're continuing to play around with the monetization. I'm sure people will be upset about the free skill points.
Why at this day and age? Why would you be upset?
Because why not? We are nothing if not long-lived and bitter.
I think we're way past getting upset about buying skill points.
I am sure that we will get a wonderful GIF from Manic Velocity about how this is still the worst thing ever.
Look, CCP, I mean, EVE Online can never be a pay to win, right? So relax. Gold
Sure.
ammo is okay.
Yeah.
Relax. It's okay.
20 years in, we need to have catch-up mechanics. Either way,
Yeah.
okay, so in addition to that, I also wanted to point out that there's a new Poshvin entrance guide by Alexis Matari. So it's
Yeah.
poshvin.alexismatari.com. It's a wonderful guide for the basics of Poshvin, and more importantly, everything that we kind of know about how to get into and out of Poshvin, which is a lot of people's most challenging pieces. So that's a thing to check out. And then also so from this patch, we got patched in all of the stuff that we need for the Yule event. So the next major event in EVE is going to be coming either this week or next week, probably. The Yule event is their Christmas, holiday, New Year event. We know that there's going to be 2 Abyssal PvP grounds during that time. One is going to be a 2v2v2v2 destroyer battle, and the other is going to be I want to say 3 frigate free for all.
3v3 frigates.
3v3 frigates. And the 2v2v the 4-way 2-man destroyer one has me really, really interested. But both of these come with the additional effect of all heat damage is halved during these abyssal fights. So get your overheat on; it'll be exciting. But then for everybody else, like for there is the actual event itself, which this seems like it's going to be a big one. The Blood Raiders Crimson Harvest had some complexity that we hadn't seen in other events. Like you had to collect stuff in one of the sites and then take it to Delve in order to sell it to the Blood Raiders. So, way more types of activities than we've seen in the past. We actually see even more complexity in this one. We have everything so we have what appears to be like metaliminal storms, but new metaliminal storms that are like ice storms. That will be where these sites spawn. It appears that Sancha will be the host empire, so they will be the rats defending these sites that we have to go kill. Though because it's Sancha, they are actually going to be providing a new implant. I assume that it's going to be Sancha that's going to be giving these new implants, but there's the Rapture implant, which is a cap speed bonus, which is super interesting. But also, instead of having to go constantly hunt down these sites, it looks like there's going to be new filaments that will literally teleport you to one of these metaliminal storms, which has some really crazy ramifications depending on how things go, because theoretically speaking, this could give somebody a filament to allow them to teleport from anywhere directly to HiSec. So we'll have to see how well that works. Thankfully, like this is a holiday, so 2 weeks. You have the next 2 weeks to evac whatever you want to HiSec, I guess. But you'll still be in the storm, and it's unclear as to how to get these filaments. So could be. My point is that there's a lot to pay attention to, and when you see this event comes out, I would recommend that you get on top of it and know what's going to be part of it, and how to get your ISK out of it, because there's going to be stuff in high, low, and nullsec. There's going to be filaments involved. There, you mine ice, so you go in and there's these different, there's ice belts, and by mining the ice, that actually breaks up and releases the strong boxes, it seems, and then you would either you take those strong boxes to Outer Ring Excavation or Orcas that are defended by Mortis Legion's rats. So how this all will play out, the exact details we won't know until it's released, but it looks like there is a lot to that they can put into this, including one of my favorite things is that since CCP is a Icelandic company, they like to bring in the Icelandic culture. So during Yule, they like to bring in the Yule lads, which is an Icelandic, these 13 Icelandic almost gremlins that cause all kinds of problems during the Yule season. They are bringing them into the game sort of again through the form of they have EVE versions of them all. So instead of door slammer, they have airlock slammer. So posters for these guys, among others, will be the items that you can pick up from these different sites. And obviously the sites in nullsec will have better loot available. We'll have better lock boxes with better loot inside than the ones in HiSec.
All right. Cool. So that's coming next week, probably.
Yeah, well, like I said, so the PvP event starts on the 18th, but the Abyssal stuff doesn't have to be tied to the event. They put it in this week. I still think that they might release it closer to Christmas, so it might be next week, but it could start this week.
Well, 'tis the season. All right. Anything else, Ashterothi, or anyone?
I think that's it. I think
So it's been a
Tuesdays
long show.
are busy days, man.
This is 4 times the usual length.
We
had a lot.
I wanted to make I told you I wanted Tuesday to be the thing. Like I wanted to focus on Tuesdays because I knew that Tuesday would be the day that news comes out. So we're gonna hopefully focus on bringing people, or shoring up these moments in time in which CCP brings out stuff, so that way we can talk about it and get people the information they need as fast as possible.
Yeah. Cyberpunk, that comes out tomorrow or in 10 days? I thought it was 10 days.
On the 10th.
Yeah, today in my time.
It's not delayed again?
No,
well, it's not delayed.
Isn't actually the release date. It's actually out today. Yeah,
but you have to download it 3 times because of all of the day one patches and bugs. It'll be fun.
Is it
actually
going to be a big deal for EVE Online?
Well, so it's by the same guys who make Witcher 3, so it's a single player game. So it has a limited scope. I would say when it comes to like consuming, I imagine that there might be some big drop off for some time. I have committed to anytime I play Cyberpunk, I'm going to be streaming it. So I may not be mic'd or whatever, but you guys get to see all of my mess ups. But like, I think that it's been estimated at somewhere like 60 hours for the main content, and I assume that it'll be like Skyrim. So like, if you wanted to, you could get a few hundred hours out of it. But it is a single player campaign, more or less. So it won't replace the EVE itch.
Well, it's a brutal open world where you get to wreak havoc if you want to, or try to survive it. That's kind of the appeal of EVE Online. I know a lot of people who are saying the war is going to slow down because so many people are going to be wanting to play this. So it will be interesting to see.
Just play it in the tie-dye, you'll be fine.
Morale is always like the number one feature, or the unspoken feature of most of these wars, and so this will play into it. The side that motivates their people to show up in spite of this, over the other, will get an edge in the war for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. There's that weekly post about the activity, so we'll see how that changes with Cyberpunk.
It's like a clip.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm not slated to play this. I may actually stream Death Stranding for those that haven't seen it. It's
another good one.
It's my favorite game of the year. Thought it was ingenious and fantastical. And it really, you can scratch that sci-fi itch with it. So this is other stuff. Again, EVE Online always around, but this game is like magnificent.
One of the reasons why I really want to stream Cyberpunk is because they have a special streamer mode. Like they literally took into consideration streamers. And so if you put it into streamer mode, it turns off all of the licensed music and it censors all of the nudity, which I find like the details are great, but the fact that they are willing to do that and be like, what does it need to make it so that streamers can do this easily and more effectively? CCP, please take note. That's why I actually have committed myself to streaming Cyberpunk, because I want to like put my emphasis behind this idea of like, please, like, let us have a streamer mode that customizes, that tailors the UI in some small ways. Hide the information right above where you're warping to,
Right.
so that way streamers can more effectively stream this game. Like, put some dev cycles into it. We do a lot of work to get people, like, we do a lot of the legwork for CCP to make sure that people know what this game is, advertise for it, educate people about it, etc. Give us the tools to do this more effectively and not wash people out.
Hey man, we're making progress. The partner thing is out.
Yes,
we're making progress.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, congratulations, Torvald. Are they in order? You are a partner, right? I just
Yeah, I'm in that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. CCP's been known about this for years, and we've been pushing it, and it finally CSP Aurora, Dopamine, and Convict, man, they kicked ass, and
Those
it's
truly
an incredible program.
Truly great community team there, starting with a very professional Dopamine is just stand out. I don't know if he's the leader there, but he certainly has the presence, and the.
I was streaming Eve to 7 viewers, I think, and Dopamine dropped by and said hi and asked me who I was and stuff. And to this day, the Hearthstone community manager still doesn't know who I am. So yeah,
a little bit different.
That's my
right?
job.
Community.
Yeah, that's a little bit different, isn't it? We're spoiled. All right.
Yeah, just a bit. It was really, but Dopamine was superb. Yeah, very good.
All of them are great. Really, really like all of them. Ashterothi, thanks for coming on. We're going to see a lot more of you, right?
Yeah, I hope to, obviously my mission statement is putting Eve into context for my fellow Empyreans. And, just to, I was streaming for a long time and I haven't been streaming as much recently. And one of the big reasons why is because I actually have my son full time again. So while it's great, it makes it so that it's harder for me to stream like these long streams. But this kind of stuff is perfect for me. So I hope to be lending my support as much as I can and help make Talking in Stations the definitive place to learn about EVE Online.
Well, we're good with one of the places, but yeah,
you can have your mission. I have mine.
Got to share the player base. But thanks, and it's good that we're going to see a lot more of you. Looking forward to all that. And Torvald, thanks for coming by. And Lorinda, it's really nice to meet you. I have a feeling we're going to hear and see a lot more of you in the future.
Thanks for having me on. I'll be on anytime you want someone to talk to Ash for 3 hours. I'm your man. We've got practice in this, so yeah, we can do that again. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This is one of the very first shows I watched to do with Eve, so it's great to actually be on the show. I loved it.
That's good. Well, we're going to have you back in really soon. And Gregorian, thanks for coming by today, and also thank you guys for watching today. We will remind you one last time that if you want to see Talking in Station in-game, you can use your mail list function that is in your mail window in-game and subscribe to TIS News. All right. Also, give us thumbs up and, do all those social media things you need to do for Talking in Stations to help us out. And if you really want to help us out, become a Patreon. We just highlighted a Patreon on yesterday's show. We're going to start highlighting our Patreons because they're doing it for you guys here, the audience. You get all this work that we put in, and they're the ones carrying part of that burden. Okay, so thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and raid somebody, and we will see you tomorrow.